The summons, the message arrived on a Tuesday morning, transmitted across impossible distances through quantum entanglement arrays that humanity had only recently mastered. Captain Mira Thorne stood in the communications center of Lunar Station Alpha, watching the holographic display flicker with alien script that seemed to writhe and shift before her eyes. "Translation confirmed," announced Technician Reeves, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "It's from something called the Galactic Dominion Council. They're summoning us." Mira's jaw tightened as she read the translated text. The language was formal, ceremonious, and utterly condescending. Humanity was to send a representative to answer for crimes against galactic order and unauthorized expansion beyond designated boundaries. The implication was clear. They considered humans little, more than unruly children who had wandered too far from home. "Crimes," she muttered, her dark eyes flashing with indignation. "Since when is survival a crime?" The door to the communications center hissed open, and Lieutenant Jace Rivera stepped inside. His presence filled the room with a warmth that Mira both craved and dreaded. They had a history, one that duty had forced them to set aside, but never forget. "The councils made their decision," Jace said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "You're going, Mira," she turned to face him, noting the concern etched in his features. They had served together for 5 years, fought side by side during the Centauri uprising, and shared moments of tenderness between the chaos of military life. His hand moved instinctively toward hers, then stopped, remembering where they were. "Of course they chose me," Mira replied with a bitter smile. "The woman who told Admiral Morrison exactly what she thought of his diplomatic protocols during the Proxima negotiations. That's exactly why they chose you." Jace stepped closer, lowering his voice. "These aliens think they can intimidate us into submission. They need someone who won't bend." The hologram continued to display the alien message, its ethereal glow casting strange shadows across their faces. The Dominion had given humanity 30 standard days to comply. Failure to appear would result in corrective measures, a euphemism that sent chills through every human colony from Earth to the Outer Rim. "What do we know about them?" Mira asked, though she suspected the answer wouldn't be encouraging. "Very little," Jace admitted. "Long-range sensors have detected massive structures in the Vega system, artificial constructs the size of moons. Their technology is beyond anything we've encountered. The quantum signature of this message alone required more energy than our entire fleet generates in a year." Mira walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars that humanity had only recently begun to call home. In just 2 centuries, they had spread across dozens of systems, building colonies, mining asteroids, and establishing trade routes. To them, it was expansion. To someone else, apparently, it was a threat. "They're afraid," she said suddenly, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Jace moved to stand beside her. "Afraid of us? Think about it. If they're so powerful, why the formal summons? Why not just destroy us outright?" Mira's reflection in the viewport showed a woman transformed by responsibility and resolve. "They're giving us a chance to surrender because they're not sure they can win." The implications hung in the air between them. Humanity's rapid technological advancement had surprised even their own scientists. The breakthrough in quantum mechanics had come from studying alien artifacts found in the Kepler system, artifacts that the Dominion now claimed belonged to them. "Mira," Jace said softly, his hand finally finding hers. "When you stand before them, remember that you're not just representing Earth. You're representing every human who ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of something more." She squeezed his hand, drawing strength from the contact. "And when I tell them that humanity won't kneel, I'll be speaking for every person who refuses to live in chains." The stars outside seemed to shimmer with promise and peril. In 30 days, Mira would face an alien council that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. She would carry with her the hopes, dreams, and defiance of an entire species. As the message continued its endless loop, displaying terms of surrender disguised as diplomatic protocol, Mira Thorne began to plan not for capitulation, but for the moment when humanity would announce to the galaxy that they were nobody's subjects. The countdown had begun. The Tribunal of Ancients, the Dominion Tribunal Station, defied human comprehension. Mira's transport vessel, the Defiant Dawn, seemed like a minnow approaching a leviathan as they drew near the colossal structure. Built from materials that shifted between solid matter and pure energy, the station orbited a dying red giant, feeding off stellar radiation to power technologies beyond human understanding. "By the void," whispered Captain Torres, Mira's escort commander, as they passed through energy barriers that scanned every molecule of their ship. "It's beautiful and terrifying at once." Mira stood at the observation deck, her diplomatic uniform crisp and formal, but her hands steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. The station's docking bay could have housed Earth's entire lunar fleet. As they descended, she caught glimpses of vessels from dozens of species, some sleek as liquid mercury, others angular and crystalline, all bearing the marks of civilizations far older than humanity. The airlock hissed open, revealing Ambassador Zelion, their assigned escort. The crystalline being stood nearly 3 meters tall, its translucent body refracting the station's ambient light into rainbow patterns. When it spoke, its voice resonated like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Captain Thorne," Zelion said, inclining its geometric head, "the Council of 12 awaits your presence. I trust your journey was educational." "Educational indeed," Mira replied, noting the subtle condescension in the alien's tone. "Though I suspect the real education begins now." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch infinitely upward, past beings that existed as pure energy, others that appeared to be living stone, and creatures that defied every law of biology Mira understood. The diversity was staggering, yet she noticed something troubling. Every being they passed watched her with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, as if observing a primitive specimen. The tribunal chamber itself was a marvel of architectural impossibility. 12 thrones arranged in a perfect circle, each suspended in space without visible support, surrounded by galleries where hundreds of observers floated or stood according to their species' nature. At the chamber's heart, a single platform awaited, clearly meant for the accused. "Before we begin," Mira said, activating her wrist communicator, "I'm establishing a quantum link to my fleet for consultation purposes." The holographic image of Lieutenant Jace Rivera materialized beside her, his presence offering comfort even across the vast distance. Several council members stirred with what might have been annoyance. "Unnecessary," rumbled High Chancellor Vorik from his throne of living metal. The reptilian being's scales shifted from bronze to deep crimson as he spoke. "This proceeding requires only your submission to judgment." "Respectfully, Chancellor," Mira replied, stepping onto the platform with deliberate confidence. "I'm here for dialogue, not submission." A ripple of shock passed through the assembly. Judge Cathera, existing as a swirling mass of coherent energy, pulsed with what Mira interpreted as surprise. "You misunderstand your position, human. You stand accused before the supreme authority of this galaxy." Mira's eyes swept the circle, meeting the gaze of each council member in turn. Some possessed compound eyes like insects. Others had visual organs that existed across spectrums she couldn't perceive, but she didn't flinch from any of them. "I understand my position perfectly," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "I stand here as the representative of a free species that refuses to acknowledge any authority it didn't consent to." The silence that followed was pregnant with disbelief. In the hologram, Jace's expression showed both pride and concern. He knew Mira's courage, but also her tendency to escalate confrontations when faced with bullying. "Your species," continued Judge Cathera, "has violated 17 articles of the Galactic Concordat. You have expanded beyond designated zones, developed prohibited technologies, and ignored warnings from superior civilizations." "Superior?" Mira's laugh was sharp, cutting. "Superior in age, perhaps. Superior in technology, possibly. But superior in right to exist? That's where we disagree." Ambassador Zelion's crystalline form chimed with agitation. "The Concordat has maintained galactic peace for 50,000 years. Every species that achieves interstellar travel must submit to its wisdom." "Every species that achieves interstellar travel," Mira countered, "has apparently been too frightened to question whether your peace is worth the price of their freedom." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien languages. Some delegates expressed outrage, others confusion, but underneath it all, Mira detected something else: uncertainty. These beings had ruled for millennia, but they had never encountered a species that simply refused to acknowledge their authority. Through her communicator, Jace's image flickered. "Mira," he said quietly, "sensors indicate massive energy buildups around the station. They might be preparing—" "Let them prepare," Mira interrupted, though her heart raced at the implication. "We came here to speak truth, not to cower." High Chancellor Vorik's scales had shifted to deep purple, a color Mira's briefings suggested indicated either rage or fear. "Human," he said, his voice carrying the weight of eons. "You speak of freedom as if it were more valuable than order. Chaos is the natural state of the universe. We have spent millions of years building something better." Mira felt the weight of billions of human lives resting on her shoulders, but also their indomitable spirit flowing through her words. "Chancellor, you've built something stable, I'll grant you that. But stability isn't the same as justice, and order isn't the same as righteousness." She gestured to the assembled aliens, each representing civilizations that had submitted to Dominion rule. "How many of these species came before you as conquerors? How many arrived as proud, independent peoples who were gradually convinced that submission was wisdom?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. In the galleries, Mira noticed some of the younger representatives exchanging glances, brief moments of recognition that suggested her words had found their mark. "We offer them protection," Judge Cathara pulsed defensively. "Resources, knowledge, peace. You offer them the peace of the grave," Mira replied. "The peace of never having to make another difficult decision, never having to risk failure, never having to grow. You've created a galaxy of children, dependent on your approval for their next breath." As her words echoed through the chamber, Mira realized she had crossed a line from which there could be no retreat. The Council of 12 had revealed their deepest fear, that other species might follow humanity's example and choose the dangerous path of independence over the safe road of subjugation. The real trial was just beginning. The weight of truth. The tribunal chamber fell silent except for the subtle harmonics of the space station's alien technology. Mira could feel the weight of thousands of years of galactic precedent pressing down on her, but she stood firm, drawing strength from the knowledge that every human colony across the stars was watching through quantum-linked broadcasts. Enforcer General Quox rose from his throne, his insectoid form clicking and whirring with mechanical precision. Where other species had evolved naturally, the Cox had replaced most of their biology with biotechnology millennia ago. His compound eyes reflected Mira's image hundreds of times, each facet gleaming with cold calculation. "Let us dispense with philosophy," Cox declared, his voice synthesized through vocal modulators. "The human species has committed acts of expansion into 17 star systems claimed by the Dominion. They have reverse-engineered Dominion technology without permission. Most concerning, they have weaponized discoveries that younger species are forbidden to possess." Mira felt Jace's holographic presence beside her, a reminder that she wasn't alone despite standing in the heart of enemy territory. "General Cox," she said, "you speak of claims and permissions as if the universe itself acknowledged your sovereignty. By what right do you forbid a species from defending itself?" A new voice entered the debate, ancient, measured, carrying the weight of geological ages. Historian Neth emerged from what Mira had initially taken to be a decorative pillar. The gastropod-like being moved with deliberate slowness, its shell-covered form having witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "The right of survival," Neth said, each word carefully chosen. When the Dominion formed, this galaxy was consumed by warfare. Species fought species in conflicts that sterilized entire sectors. The Concordat ended that chaos. At what cost? Mira challenged, her mind racing back to classified briefings about humanity's recent history. "Tell me, Historian Neth, how many species chose to join your Concordat after you demonstrated your military superiority?" The alien's eye stalks retracted slightly. What her briefings had indicated was a sign of discomfort. "The transition to galactic order required guidance." Mira's expression hardened. "Guidance. Like the guidance you offered the Signan Republic when they refused to limit their population growth? The same guidance that turned 3 of their worlds into glass? A shockwave of whispers rippled through the gallery. Even some council members seemed surprised by Mira's knowledge of ancient events. But it was High Chancellor Vorik who responded, his reptilian features twisting with what might have been old pain. The Signans were given multiple warnings, he said. Their expansionist ideology threatened the stability of 12 sectors. We acted to preserve the greater good. You acted to preserve your control. Mira shot back. Then more quietly she added, "Tell me, Chancellor, do you ever dream about the Signan children who never got to grow up?" The question hit like a physical blow. Vorik's scales shifted to colors Mira had never seen in her briefings. Deep purples shot through with silver, possibly indicating emotions his species rarely displayed publicly. In the holographic link, Jace leaned forward. "Mira," he whispered, "you're getting through to them. Keep pushing." But Mira was already accessing deeper memories, ones that brought pain even as they strengthened her resolve. She thought of Dr. Elena Cross, the brilliant xenoarchaeologist who had discovered the ancient ruins on Kepler 442b. Elena, with her infectious laugh and fearless curiosity, who had died defending the colony when Dominion peacekeepers arrived to confiscate their findings. 5 months ago, Mira said, her voice carrying a new edge of personal grief. Your forces attacked our research station on Kepler 442b. They claimed we had discovered artifacts that belonged to you. Dr. Elena Cross, our lead archaeologist, tried to explain that the ruins predated your concordate by millions of years. She paused, letting the silence emphasize her next words. She died trying to protect knowledge that belonged to all sentient species. Not to humanity, not to you, to everyone who might benefit from understanding our shared galactic heritage. Judge Kithara's energy form pulsed with agitation. The Kepler artifacts contained technologies that could destabilize the galactic order. Younger species lacked the wisdom to use such power responsibly. Wisdom? Mira's laugh was bitter. You mean the wisdom to never question your authority? The wisdom to accept limits you've set based on your own fear? She gestured to the assembled aliens, her movements sharp with controlled anger. Every species in this chamber once possessed the same curiosity, the same drive to explore and grow that you now condemn in humanity. But you've bred it out of them, generation by generation, until they've forgotten what it feels like to reach for the stars on their own terms. Ambassador Zelian's crystalline form chimed with discord. Order prevents chaos, human. Your species has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. We have maintained galactic peace for 50 millennia. Experience grants authority. Experience grants knowledge, Mira corrected. Authority must be earned through justice, not imposed through fear. She moved to the center of the platform, addressing not just the Council of 12, but every being in the vast chamber. You want to know why humanity refuses to submit? It's because we've seen what submission costs. We've studied the species that came before us, the ones who chose to join your concordate. Every single one paid the same price. They gave up their dreams in exchange for your protection. The chamber buzzed with alien voices, some angry, others thoughtful. But Mira pressed on, knowing she might never get another chance to speak these truths. The Kepler ruins contain star maps, she revealed, causing several council members to stiffen visibly. Maps showing that this galaxy once contained thousands of independent civilizations, each developing along their own unique path. Now there are 12 species on your council, and hundreds of others who exist only as shadows of what they once were. Historian Neth's shell began to glow with bioluminescent patterns, a sign of extreme agitation. The old ways led to war. Always war. And your way leads to stagnation, Mira replied. A galaxy where nothing new is discovered, where no one dares to dream beyond the boundaries you've set. You haven't created peace. You've created a beautiful graveyard. In the holographic link, Jace's image flickered as massive energy signatures began building around the station. Mira, he said urgently, whatever you're doing, it's working. Half their fleet is moving to defensive positions. They're scared, Mira smiled grimly. Good. Fear is the beginning of respect. She turned back to the council, her voice carrying across the chamber with quiet intensity. "We know you could destroy us. Your technology is superior, your fleet's larger. But before you make that choice, ask yourselves this. What happens when other species see that you had to annihilate an entire civilization to maintain your control? How long before they start questioning whether your protection is worth the price of their souls?" The truth hung in the air like a sword, and for the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Dominion faced a question they couldn't answer with superior firepower. The fires of conviction. The energy readings around the tribunal station had reached critical levels, and Mira could feel the barely contained power humming through the deck, plating beneath her feet. The Council of 12 had moved beyond debate into the realm of decision, and the weight of their deliberation pressed against her like a physical force. War Chief Brax was the first to break the tense silence. The savage warrior rose from his bone-carved throne, his scarred hide bearing the marks of 1,000 battles. His species, the Korath, had once been among the most feared raiders in the galaxy before the Dominion had civilized them into enforcers of order. "Enough words," Brax growled, his voice like grinding stone. "This human speaks of freedom as if it were a virtue. Freedom is chaos. Freedom is the strong devouring the weak without consequence." Mira met his predatory gaze without flinching. "And yet your people once valued that freedom above all else, didn't they, War Chief? Before you traded your independence for the security of serving as the Dominion's attack dogs." The insult hit home. Brax's claws extended from his fingers, leaving gouges in the armrests of his throne. "My people learned wisdom. We learned that strength without discipline leads to destruction. You learned to direct your strength at targets chosen by others," Mira countered. "Tell me, when was the last time the Korath made a decision about their own future?" Before Brax could respond, a new voice entered the fray. Mediator Silas floated in his sphere of liquid atmosphere, his aquatic form undulating with graceful movements. Unlike the others, he radiated an aura of peace that seemed genuine rather than imposed. "Captain Thorne," Silas said, his translated words carrying a note of sadness. "Your passion is admirable, but passion without wisdom leads to tragedy. The young races that defied the Concordat did not simply disappear. They burned themselves out in conflicts they could not win." Mira felt a pang of loss as she thought of Elena, of all the humans who had died defending their right to explore and grow. But alongside the grief came something else, a fierce pride in their refusal to surrender. "Mediator Silas," she said softly, "you speak of tragedy, but isn't there tragedy in never knowing what we might have become? In never discovering what wonders we might have created if we'd been free to try and fail on our own terms?" Her communicator chimed with an incoming priority signal. Captain Torres's image materialized alongside Jace's, his expression grim. "Captain Thorne," Torres said, "we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout the system. Dominion vessels are taking position to blockade our return route." High Chancellor Vorik's scales had shifted to deep crimson, indicating either rage or preparation for violence. "Your words carry the scent of revolution, human. Do you truly believe other species will follow your example into chaos?" "I believe," Mira said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "that every sentient being in this galaxy dreams of something more than managed existence. You've built a system so focused on preventing conflict that you've forgotten what's worth fighting for." She turned to address the gallery, where hundreds of representatives from subjugated species watched in silence. "How many of you remember the songs your ancestors sang about the stars? How many of you have children who ask questions you're not allowed to answer?" A ripple of movement passed through the assembled aliens. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others exchanged glances that spoke of long-suppressed yearnings. Even some of the younger council members seemed affected by her words. "This is sedition," Enforcer General Cox declared, his mechanical components whirring with increased activity. "You seek to destabilize the order that has preserved civilization for 50 millennia." "I seek to remind civilization what it means to be alive," Mira replied. Then, her voice dropping to intimate tones that somehow carried across the chamber, she added, "General Cox, before your people became the Dominion's enforcers, what did they dream of becoming? The question seemed to strike something deep within the cyborg alien. For a moment, his compound eyes dimmed, and Mira caught a glimpse of something that might have been regret. Her communicator activated again, and this time it was Jace himself who spoke, his image flickering with emotion. "Mira," he said, his voice heavy with things left unsaid, the fleet's moving into position. "Whatever happens here, I want you to know—" "I know," she interrupted gently, her hand moving unconsciously toward the hologram. "I've always known." The intimate moment was shattered by War Chief Brax slamming his fist against his throne. "Enough! This human poisons the air with her words. Let us end this charade and restore order." "What order?" Mira demanded, whirling to face him. "The order that says some species deserve freedom while others exist only to serve? The order that decides what knowledge is safe for younger races to possess? You haven't created order. You've created inequality so vast that you mistake it for natural law." Judge Cathara pulsed with intense energy. "You offer only destruction, human. Chaos and war and the collapse of everything we have built." "I offer choice," Mira said simply. "The choice to succeed or fail based on our own decisions. The choice to grow and learn and become something new. The choice to live as free beings rather than protected pets." Historian Neth's ancient voice carried across the chamber like the whisper of geological ages. "And if your choices lead to extinction?" Mira's smile was sad but determined. "Then at least we'll have been truly alive before we died." The words seemed to resonate through the chamber like a bell, touching something primal in even the most thoroughly subjugated species. For a moment, the vast space was filled with nothing but the hum of alien technology and the weight of possibilities. Then, Captain Torres's voice cut through the silence with urgent precision. "Multiple fleets dropping out of hyperspace. Dominion, Korath, and Cox battle groups forming attack formations. Captain Thorne, you need to know. Admiral Reyes has arrived with the entire Third Fleet. They're taking defensive positions around our vessel." The chamber erupted in chaos as aliens shouted in dozens of languages. But through it all, Mira stood calm at the center of the storm, her conviction burning bright as a star. Humanity had spoken its truth to the galaxy's oldest powers, and now both sides would learn what that truth was worth. The new dawn, the space around the tribunal station, had become a tapestry of ships, representing the two greatest military forces the galaxy had ever seen facing each other. Admiral Dana Reyes' Third Fleet hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the quantum armor that humanity had developed from studying the Kepler artifacts. Opposing them, the Dominion's enforcement fleets spread across the system like a metallic constellation, their ancient weapons charged and ready. In the tribunal chamber, the arrival of the human fleet had created a schism among the Council of 12. Half demanded immediate attack, while others called for restraint. But it was High Chancellor Vorik who commanded attention when he rose from his throne. His scales now displaying patterns Mira had never seen, complex spirals of gold and silver that seemed to pulse with inner light. "In 50,000 years, Vorik said, his voice carrying the weight of eons, no species has dared to bring weapons before this tribunal. Yet you arrive with an entire battle fleet as if you expect war." Mira's communicator crackled to life, and Admiral Reyes's image joined Jace's in the holographic display. The Admiral was exactly as Mira remembered her. Steel-gray hair pulled back severely, eyes that had seen too much war, and a presence that commanded instant respect. "Chancellor Vorik," Admiral Reyes said, her voice carrying across interstellar space with perfect clarity. "We came prepared for war, but we hope for peace." "The choice is yours!" War Chief Brax snarled from his throne. "You bring your pathetic ships against the might of the Dominion? We have fleets that have conquered entire sectors. And yet," Admiral Reyes replied calmly, "you haven't fired." "Why is that, War Chief? Are you waiting for orders, or are you afraid that this time the outcome might be different?" The challenge hung in space between the two forces. Mira could feel the tension like a living thing, crackling with potential violence. But she also sensed something else. Uncertainty among the alien forces, as if they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Mediator Silas floated forward in his aquatic sphere, his movements agitated. Admiral, your presence here escalates this situation beyond diplomatic resolution. Withdraw your forces and perhaps accommodation can be reached. Accommodation? Mira laughed, the sound sharp in the vast chamber. You mean the kind of accommodation you offered the Signan Republic? The kind where you graciously allow us to exist as long as we never question your authority? She stepped forward, addressing not just the council, but every being present. You want to know why we brought our fleet? Because we learned something from studying your history. Every species that trusted your diplomatic solutions ended up as vassals. Every civilization that laid down their weapons found themselves defenseless when you decided their compliance was insufficient. Judge Cathara pulsed with angry energy. Your species has existed in space for 2 centuries. We have maintained galactic order for 50 millennia. Experience has made you predictable, interrupted Captain Torres, his image joining the growing holographic conference. Our analysts have studied every Dominion conflict for the past 10,000 years. You always follow the same pattern: diplomatic ultimatum, demonstration of superior force, then gradual subjugation disguised as protection. Enforcer General Cox's mechanical components whirred with increased activity. Analysis is irrelevant when facing superior numbers and technology, is it? Admiral Reyes smiled grimly. General, how many of your fleets have ever faced an enemy that fought back with their own innovations rather than trying to copy your tactics? The question created an uncomfortable silence among the council members. Mira realized the Admiral was exposing something. The Dominion had worked hard to hide. They hadn't faced genuine opposition in so long that their military doctrine had become stagnant. Ambassador Zellian's crystalline form chimed with discord. This debate serves no purpose. The human fleet must withdraw or face the consequences of defying galactic law. Whose law? Mira demanded. The law you imposed on species too frightened to resist? The law that says you can decide what knowledge is safe for others to possess, what boundaries they're allowed to cross, what dreams they're permitted to have. She moved to the center of the platform, her presence commanding attention from every being in the chamber. We reject your law. We reject your authority. We reject the premise that age grants the right to rule over those who never consented to be ruled. The declaration sent shockwaves through the assembly. In the galleries, representatives from dozens of species leaned forward. Some with expressions of shock, others with something that might have been hope. Historian Neth's ancient voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. And what would you offer in place of order, human? What system could prevent the chaos that preceded the Concordat? Cooperation instead of domination, Mira replied immediately. Trade instead of tribute? Dialogue between equals instead of commands from superiors. A galaxy where species are free to succeed or fail based on their own choices. Naive idealism, War Chief Brax growled. The strong will always dominate the weak. Then let them try, Admiral Reyes interjected, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never backed down from a fight. But let it be a fair contest, not the rigged game you've been playing for 50,000 years. High Chancellor Vorik had been silent during the exchange, his scales cycling through colors that spoke of deep thought. When he finally spoke, his words surprised everyone present. In my youth, he said slowly, before the Dominion was formed, my people possessed something we called the fire of creation, the drive to build something new rather than simply maintain what already existed. We traded that fire for security, for the promise of eternal peace. He looked directly at Mira, and she saw something unexpected in his ancient eyes. Regret. Perhaps, he continued, we have been so focused on preventing the mistakes of the past that we forgot to prepare for the possibilities of the future. The admission created a fracture in the Council's unity. Some members looked shocked, others thoughtful. But it was Judge Kithara who voiced the crucial question. If we were to consider alternative arrangements, what guarantee could humanity offer that your freedom would not lead to the same conflicts that nearly destroyed this galaxy? Mira felt the weight of history pressing down on her, but also the lift of hope. No guarantees, she said honestly. Freedom comes with risk, but we offer partnership, the chance to build something new together instead of maintaining something old through fear. Through the communicator, Jace's voice carried a note of wonder. "Mira, we're receiving signals from across the galaxy. Other species are broadcasting support for the human position. The message is spreading. The implications hit the chamber like a physical force. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Dominion faced the possibility of widespread resistance to their authority." Admiral Reyes leaned forward in her hologram. "The Third Fleet stands ready to defend our right to exist as free beings. But we'd rather stand alongside you as allies in building a galaxy where all species can flourish." The choice hung in the space between the two great fleets: war or transformation, the death of the old order or the birth of something unprecedented. High Chancellor Vorik's scales shifted to patterns of deep contemplation as he realized that the age of unquestioned Dominion authority was ending. "One way or another, perhaps," he said finally, "it is time for the Council of 12 to become something more inclusive. Time to discover what this galaxy might accomplish if we stopped fearing its potential and started nurturing it instead." As agreements began to form and new possibilities took shape, Mira felt a hand on her shoulder. Jace had materialized through the transporter, his physical presence finally joining her after the long separation. Their embrace was brief but intense, a promise of all the conversations and connections that awaited them in the new galaxy they were helping to create. The echo of humanity's defiance had become the first note of a new galactic symphony, one where every species would have a voice in composing their shared future. 3 months later, Mira stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the first truly multi-species diplomatic facility built on principles of equality rather than hierarchy. Through the viewport, she could see ships from dozens of civilizations working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old Concordat. Jace joined her, slipping his arms around her waist as they watched a joint human Arcanus research vessel preparing to explore regions of space that had been forbidden for millennia. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. Mira leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Only one, that it took us so long to realize that the greatest adventures begin when you stop asking permission to live your life." Outside, the stars beckoned with infinite possibilities, and for the first time in 50,000 years, every species in the galaxy was free to answer their call: Worth.